We all have triggers. We may not want to admit it, but we do. It's also important to point out that every cycle will probably have its own unique trigger. And the fall into depression from mania or hypomania may not even have a trigger at all, or it may be so insignificant that you can't even recognise it from the multitude of additional issues at the time. However, and I speak from my experience, some triggers are recurring, and for me, I can, on reflection, identify a singly related trigger that has been present in all my previous hypomanic episodes, be it at the start of the episode or partway through. That trigger has rarely been the reason for crisis, and certainly wasn't this time, and has generally not been the reason for depression, which I would generally put down to the loss of hypomania. However, it is a key trigger all the same, but it's one that I feel very reluctant to talk about to a psychiatrist because it's so insignificant. And it's something I do not like to mention to others because most don't see the importance, as it's just something they take for granted. The trigger is love, the search for love, and the acceptance that I have both an inability to love or be loved. I'm clearly not talking about parental love, sibling love, nephews, nieces, other family members, or the love of close friends. I'm not even talking about physical love, just simple affection, endearment, and tenderness. The big issue is that to avoid that trigger is to accept and be resigned to the fact that love is not a part of me. To avoid getting caught up in a spiral of attraction, emotions, and feeling would mean keeping away from or removing myself from any situations where feeling love is possible. But even then, allowing your mind to wander for just a moment, allowing it to have feelings and allowing your heart to take charge just leads you into thinking that it may be possible, this one time, that things will be different. And that perhaps those who have said that you are unable to love or be loved may be wrong. After all, Kay Redfield Jameson talks at length about love, how love can be a medicine, and how she could not have survived manic depressive illness without love. She was so right about so many things. So how is she wrong about that? Or is it just applicable to others and not me? Anyway, I took a complete detour, but one that I thought was worth taking. Not because I wanted to get into the conversation about my triggers, not because I wanted to lead the discussion, but simply state that my main trigger is not something major. It's not something most people would consider a valid reason. It's not something most people would even consider a reasonable excuse, but something most people would consider petty, insignificant, and feeble. Most manic depressives will have similar petty, insignificant, and feeble triggers. They may have struggled to settle in a permanent job, may have many failed relationships, may have had recurring physical illnesses, or may even just have had too many depressive cycles. Indeed, small changes, such as lasting 6 months in a job, having a relationship that seems to be going well, having a significant recovery from a physical illness, or simply having 6 months without depression, can be enough to trigger mania or hypomania. The key factor in these, and my own experience, is that those triggers are small, are generally positive, and start with slight elation. Indeed, I feel it's safe to say that many hypomanic cycles, and some manic ones, start small, from insignificant triggers. However, that minor lift has the ability to build into such a whirlwind of thrilling, exciting, energetic, and impulsive extravagance that, to the untrained eye, there is an expectation that the trigger would have been something of a huge, life-changing event. It is perhaps important to note that the existence of minor triggers is generally where mania and hypomania differ from clinical depression. Whilst depression can be triggered by insignificant events, it would be safe to suggest that it's often the case that the non-recurring depressive illness could either result from multiple connected or unconnected issues, or from a more landmark event. It is also much easier to determine depressive triggers, as the sufferer will spend days, weeks or months ruining them. They may also wish to completely avoid that situation occurring ever again. However, as I'm sure I've identified, triggers of mania may well not be rude. The actual trigger, instead of being confused with the event that ended the mood swing. As I have also suggested, the sufferer may not want to avoid the trigger in the future. As with my example, I will not avoid finding love. Despite that, I know it has the likelihood of causing a hypomanic cycle, the potential of leading to depression, and as the hypomanic cycle has been triggered, the chances of crisis situation resulting, either from it or from external factors.